20th century icon, Andy Warhol managed to show the world that ordinary, homogeneous art could also find its place in a museum. Irreverent, controversial and contradictory, his life was a work of art, with a plethora of colours and contrasts, just like his paintings. Each of his creations possessed a part of him, a repetition of designs, sometimes extremely conventional or sometimes linked to Hollywood's protagonists. This made each of his paintings appear to be a simple and commercial product, but instead they are sold for millions in auction houses located in the world's most important cities.
1, 2, 3.
In the next hour, we will submerge ourselves into the life of one of the most famous contemporary artists. His story began with a humble past, full of references to television and comics. It continued through academia and his great success in the advertising industry, followed by worldwide stardom achieved through his creations. We will enter the life and mind of the man who managed to become a brand and break the conventional molds in art. To create a movement with his simple presence, making him a legend. Join us as we learn more about the fluorescent, bright and trailblazing life of Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol was the creator of his own myth. Beyond his paintings, he marked a revolution in the world of art. A precedent that will always be remembered, imitated, criticized and defied.
Dans les dernières années, on a effectivement une internationalisation des acheteurs. On a une demande qui vient non plus seulement d'Europe et des États-Unis, mais aussi d'Amérique du Sud, de Russie, d'Asie. Donc c'est vraiment un marché qui se mondialise.
American culture is defined by, I don't know, Coca-Cola and Andy Warhol. So there are kind of different levels of impact, American culture has today in the international consumerism or just in any cultural life. So Warhol became the symbol of American life.
From his days in a small town in the northeastern United States, Warhol always found a way to keep his name on everyone's lips. His rapid road to fame, scandal, and his appearance in the tabloids he read as a child were the consequences of his detailed knowledge on the ingredients required to become a star. Andy Warhol was an interesting man, an artist and an eccentric, yet conventional being. His dream was to become a household name and to emulate a factory of fame. He was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on August 6, 1928, under the name Andrew Warhola, to a humble family of Russian immigrants who fled the Carpathian area in search of a new life in America. Andrew discovered the world from a small two-bedroom apartment located in a working-class neighborhood. It was on that grayish side of Pennsylvania where he dreamed of a life in Technicolor, the procedure that allowed the colors of objects to be seen in film. There, in the company of his two brothers, Andrew spent his time reading comics and looking over the tabloids his father purchased. He would spend hours drawing characters, who, just like him, were the protagonists of stories of success and glamour, as well as defeat. Every Sunday, he was obligated to attend a religious service of the Byzantine Catholic faith. At the table, he experienced his mother's recipes, which oozed with Eastern European flavor. This taught Andrew the difference between tradition and novelty. Perhaps this contrast also sparked his eagerness to break free from the past and submerge himself in the true meaning of being American, the American dream, and of everything that was seen daily on the news. New products, films, offers, discounted merchandise, songs on the radio and magazines. As a young boy, Andrew was first admitted to a hospital because he was unable to control his body. He was diagnosed with Sydenham's chorea, a rare infectious disease that attacks the neurological system, formerly known as St. Vitus's disease. With the support of his parents, Andrew was able to get through the treatment. He spent a lot of time in hospitals, taking medicines and long periods of rest at home. He used his recovery time as an opportunity to continue entering his own world and feeding his obsessions. This helped him put aside the moments of fragility that would accompany him throughout the rest of his life. At the age of 8, he received a simple camera as a gift, and with it, he began documenting everything around him. His father, Andre, noticed that Andrew had an eye for art. Anticipating that he would want to formalize that hobby in college, Andre started to save some money in hopes of providing a better future for Andy, far away from the coal mine where he had worked in order to support his family in America. Today, Andy Warhol's name is the opposite of irrelevant. His phrases continue to inspire generations of creators or simple spectators who also want to achieve their very own 15 minutes of fame.
Every 15 minutes someone will be famous, or every 15 people will be famous in every 15 minutes. Or...
Were you sort of surprised how that has become a part of the lexicon?
Oh yeah, I know. I can't understand it. I thought really would be.
That famous phrase has transcended for several generations, and with the power of social media and reality shows, it currently seems to be more and more relevant.
I based it on the Andy Warhol phrase. He said in the future, he said everybody will be famous for 15 minutes.
But Andy had much more than just 15 minutes of fame. The youngest of the Warholer brothers adopted his distinctive sense of style at a very young age. Julia, his mother, always painted with him. But it wasn't until the 1950s that he would find his breakthrough. After high school and the onslaughts of San Vito's disease, accompanied by other skin pigmentation deficiencies that made his nose red, which earned him the nickname Andy Red-Nosed Warholer, he finally enrolled at the Carnegie Institute of Technology in 1945 to 1949. There, he was fascinated and participated in painting, drawing, and design workshops. At the end of his academic career, he decided to depart from his hometown. New York seemed like the ideal choice to start a new life, one that involved greater creative freedoms, better opportunities to develop his talent to its full potential, and to become a new person. In fact, it was during this period in the early 1950s that he decided to start signing his name as Andy Warhol and remove the A at the end of his last name. Thus, Andy Warhol was born. Warhol's style and personality allowed him to easily adapt to the world of advertising and the development of commercial ideas. His incredible versatility to combine the mundane with the divine made him one of the best-paid advertising illustrators at the time. His somewhat faded skin color and the contrasting clothing he wore may have seemed a little odd for the time. But the fashion industry decided to give the Pittsburgh boy a chance. So, in 1949, one of his works appeared in Glamour magazine for the first time. Many in the newsroom said that no one was able to draw a pair of luxurious shoes better than Andy Warhol. His lines were fluid, yet feminine, all at the same time. His method was almost always the same, and he stuck to it until the pinnacle of his career. Very simple drawings, capable of being reprinted again and again in a very modern way, allowed Andy to change the way he impregnated them with color. This allowed him to make immediate changes according to the demands of his clients and the design team of the brands he worked for. Later, he would make adjustments for the practicality of silkscreen printing. Eventually, his focus moved from commercial products to Hollywood's brightest stars. This established his obsession with American life and the recognition of the masses. In 1952, his mother Julia, who had been widowed 10 years earlier, decided to move to New York and accompany him. During this period, Warhol turned to her for advice and included many of her strokes and recommendations in some of his major campaigns. Simultaneously, he recorded part of this stimulating life in silent films, which he accumulated in large quantities, all while he flirted with fine arts and pieces that weren't very public. In 1956, when he delivered his first piece as an artist and unknowingly as the creator of a new movement, Warhol presented a series of non-commercial drawings in an exhibition entitled Studies for a Boy Book. In these notebooks, he explored themes such as masculinity, nobility, virility, and the vulnerable side of those who inspired him. This theme accompanied him into the 1980s, and with the emergence of AIDS, the New York art scene was shaken up. To make money is an art, to work is art, and good business is the best art. But not everything was bohemian and scandalous. Andy Warhol was not an improviser. His time studying advertising taught him how to measure the impact on his audience and what to expect from it. Since the 1950s, Warhol dominated what is now known as startups, or otherwise known as entrepreneurial projects. Like a good son of American industrialization, Andy knew perfectly well that he only needed a good production line, initial capital, which he had accumulated during his time working in the advertising industry, and a way to attract an audience. He had it all, and with the arrival of the 1960s, the ideals of perfection and family tradition were left in the past. It was a truly revolutionary moment, composed of many factors like the Beatles, anti-government protests, hippies, and Vietnam. It was then that he turned his creative work into a movement that originated in the United Kingdom, pop art. Andy Warhol was inspired by all that is often ignored in fine arts. If the curvy linear angels of Italian artists embodied the artistic canon, Warhol decided that the creations of everyday life could also be adored in museums. Inspired by products available in any American home, Warhol decided to change the color proofs of his advertisements for huge silkscreens. He edited these again and again until he was satisfied with the result. Can of Campbell's soup in all its possible forms, from a front angle, opened, reduced, or in large quantities. This was just one of his many ways of interpreting a common object with an accessible price, that thanks to him was now being talked about and discussed by gallerists. At the Ferris Gallery in Los Angeles in 1962, Warhol managed to expose some more of his recurring obsessions: natural disasters, car accidents, and celebrity gossip, all extracted from magazines and newspapers, presented in his own way. But little by little, his attention focused on other aspects of pop life. Movie stars, presidents, rock stars, people who didn't need to be introduced and who were admired or detested by almost the entire world's population. And that is how he discovered his three great muses, the women with whom he shared a colourful adventure: Elizabeth Taylor, Marilyn Monroe, and Jackie Kennedy. Different, enigmatic, and widely famous. Depending on the colour or saturation, he was able to present 1,000 versions of them. With the application of each layer of ink, they each told a brand new story. Warhol's work always caused controversy. In 1964, with the help of his two assistants, he presented a series of boxes with cleaning sponges at the Stable Gallery in New York. Today, one of these original boxes could be auctioned for approximately $3 million. At the time, that simple wooden version of that commercial product had a real-life value of 3 cents. Despite criticism, the boxes were a bestseller among contemporary art collectors. Their original price, totally absurd at the time, was about $1,000. Meanwhile, Warhol reinterpreted the scenes he cut out of newspapers, just as he had done when he was a child. In 1963, with this collection of images, he began a series called Death and Disaster. It was not a well-known chapter of his work. But as if it were a premonition, perhaps it prepared him for the attack he would suffer in 1968. In his new studio, a large industrial loft at 33 Union Square West, Warhol built a creative space for fun, entertainment, and experimentation with the hit drugs of the moment. The Silver Factory was a magnet for film artists, new talent, politicians, aristocrats, and the marginalized. Although he had changed locations twice, his factory always maintained the convulsive and attractive spirit of his works. Warhol covered the walls with silver paint and aluminium foil to give the industrial space a galactic feel. During this time, with a Bolex camera, he created a series of silent films depicting the celebrities and figures who influenced pop culture during the 60s, and of course his work. When celebrities visited his studio, Warhol did screen tests, as if he were actually selecting them for a film. Everything was worthy of a work of art. During this part of his life, a certain type of surveillance was common. And it was in that same place where a radical activist that he had met in New York and attended some of his parties shot him. Valerie Jean Solanas, later diagnosed with schizophrenia, said Warhol had promised to produce one of her plays. After Warhol severed ties, Valerie accused him of wanting to steal her ideas. After requesting the return of a manuscript which Warhol claimed to have lost, she bought a gun on the black market and the young woman shot him in the back. From then on, Warhol limited his collaborations with young talents. He had to wear a corset for the rest of his days to withstand the aftermath of the terrible operations following the attack. It was not only a physical impact, but also an emotional one that would remain with him forever. Security at the factory increased. The relaxed and infinitely enjoyable atmosphere gradually disappeared, but this gave him a new theme for inspiration: fame and death. His obsession with fame and the short-lived was also reflected in a new project that combined rock, performance, lights, projected films, and stage dancers. It was called Exploding Plastic Inevitable, better known by its acronym EPI. The music was under the responsibility of the Velvet Underground, a band led by Lou Reed, whom Andy managed for some years. In between, the experimentation gave way to the massification of his name. At one point, he claimed that he really wanted to be a machine. That's how his interpretations of Marilyn Monroe, Liz Taylor, and Jackie Kennedy became part of the imaginary of that generation. Warhol's wallpaper work covered the walls of famous people's homes. They would commission portraits of themselves with the eccentric artist, or they would be received as a gift, but only if they were on an exclusive list. Everyone dreamed of being portrayed by him: artists, models, singers, politicians, and jet-setters. And the truth is, anyone could have a Warhol serigraphy if they were close to the artist or if they paid the price of his work.
An exceptional work comes at an exceptional price. We mustn't forget that buying a painting has nothing to do with necessity. It's what we call the price of desire. And the price of desire is very difficult to quantify.
It's certainly international, yeah. He's collected worldwide. He always performs almost as high as Picasso in terms of price.
By making his circle smaller, Warhol achieved an infinite source of inspiration from the night. His friends and creative collaborators called him Dreller, an acronym for Dracula, since he fed off the energy of his young collaborators, and Cinderella for the journey he had gone through, from his humble beginnings to art legend. He was often unsociable and frivolous during interviews. It was difficult to uncover his real opinions because they were often tinted with irony. Warhol needed his own window to communicate new ideas and projects, and also to shine a light on the people who shared his ideas, and always gave the world something to talk about by going against society's norms. That's exactly how Interview was born, a revolutionary magazine with a totally different format. Warhol served as curator, and alongside British journalist John Wilcock, they changed the way celebrities were portrayed.
How much are you involved with Interview magazine?
Oh, a lot. I give a cover away every minute, and then I have to go and hide.
Is that, though, more important to you at the moment than your own work and your silk screens, or what's most of your time spent doing?
Most of my time is just to get up in the morning.
Following the cover, the best thing about the magazine was its main interview. The piece almost always included a very intimate Warhol-style conversation with one of Hollywood's biggest celebrities. Warhol laughed at the world around him many times. His projects used to be a mixture of his deepest obsessions with severe social and political criticism.
Who was one of your best interviews?
The person who talked the most and the one that I really liked the most was actually going back to Margaret Trudeau.
Margaret Trudeau?
Yeah, I really liked her a lot. I saw her in Hollywood Squares the other night.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she's great.
That's what happens. Wait, it was because she was a good talker, or she was just so candid?
She was just such a wonderful person. Mm-hmm. And I wish we had her as a first lady.
That's why it wasn't strange that Andy would assure the strangers and friends he met at various events of their possibility of landing on the cover of Interview magazine. The secret was on how willing they were to live for fame. Interview also served as the perfect opportunity to promote a new friend of Warhol's, or the new young partner to a businessman who would surely pass by his workshop to buy one of his pieces. New York was undoubtedly his workshop for rehearsals and creations, but the night, the spectacle and excesses were his greatest source of inspiration. Located between 254th and 54th Street, between 8th Avenue and Broadway, in the heart of Manhattan, was another source of inspiration for Warhol, Studio 54. The nightclub was a place of worship for celebrities in the 70s. At the height of the disco age, Studio 54 welcomed the biggest names, including Warhol and his best friends. In an exclusive atmosphere, luxury, fame and cocaine all came together in equal parts. It was the perfect cocktail for Polaroid pictures, images that have become iconic today and have marked a significant period in Warhol's life, the moment when he became a celebrity. During this time, technique wasn't too important. Whatever Andy touched, like King Midas, would turn into thousands of dollars the following day. The parties put together by Bianca Jagger in Studio 54 were the perfect playground. Theme parties, product launches and new releases, simple life celebrations. Even the biggest stars, celebrities and athletes were captivated. The possibility of Warhol making them the center of one of his pieces was like a caress to their ego.
I met him the first time he was in the club until 55, Studio 54. I spoke with the president of the Cosmos. You are crazy. This is Andy Warhol. You should say yes immediately.
Around that same time, the Rolling Stones commissioned him to make the cover of their new album, Sticky Fingers. His work earned him a Grammy nomination. Warholization was a fact. The artist received commissions from all over the world. Socialites like Vita Doria and Michael Otto. Musicians like Prince, Michael Jackson and John Lennon. Actors like Sylvester Stallone and Don Johnson. Fashion designers like Carolina Herrera, Yves Saint Laurent, Halston, Diane von Furstenberg, and even the Queen of England were all filled by Andy Warhol's colours.
Warhol did 4 different versions of Queen Elizabeth. I think this is the most striking in terms of composition.
For galleries, his life had become the most attractive subject. With it, as with so many other things, he was ahead of his time. Warhol understood the value of overexposing his private life in the media long before reality shows even became popular. At that time, he decided to leave everything documented. That's why he started an editorial crusade that led him to publish Andy Warhol's Index book in 1967, and The Philosophy of Andy Warhol, From A to B and Back Again, published in 1975. But his most memorable book is Andy Warhol Diaries, a series of private conversations with important figures in media. That book, which went on sale after his death in 1989, consists of telephone conversations that were meticulously transcribed by his assistant, Pat Hackett, in which details of what was going on in the artist's life and all the events he planned with great rigour were told.
Where do you see yourself in 20 years, Andy?
In heaven.
Pop heaven?
Yeah, pop heaven.
Although the repetitions of his elements remained the same, Warhol decided to return to painting, but with a new twist. This time, a figure captivated his attention, an image of the Chinese leader Mao Zedong. Warhol mentioned that his passive and expectant aspect contained a contradiction. He decided to unite the East and the West, capitalism and communism, with a series of colourful portraits and colossal proportions that brought him praise and criticism from many. The image, which had been zealously preserved by Chinese people in homes and offices of the straight government, had been turned into an attractive advertising piece by Warhol. During this period, Andy also created other controversial artworks, such as his piece Vote McGovern, in which then President of the United States, Richard Nixon, was seen intervening in green, blue and pink. In 1975, he published the series Ladies and Gentlemen, which also caused a stir by depicting portraits of transvestites and other figures from the drag community of the time. The following year, death was once again the focus of his work, and he premiered a new series called Skulls. When he returned to New York, Warhol thoroughly researched everything related to the iconography of the proletariat and peasant force. When he published his work, he wanted to remove any political dye from it, but he knew that it would cause a riot regardless. The height of irreverence came in 1978 with his series Oxidation Painting. The artist dampened canvases with copper paint and asked his famous friends to urinate on each piece. At one point, Warhol went as far as saying that it was a parody of another modern artist's work, Jackson Pollock's. Novelty wasn't the only part of this intense creative period in which his name became as famous as those of the stars he painted. Warhol had collector's obsession. At the foot of his desk, he had a cardboard box where he dropped the scraps from his creations and all the materials destined for oblivion: brochures, handwritten notes, and photographs. He managed to accumulate many cardboard boxes. Once he had hundreds of them filled, he put together an exhibition called Time Capsule. It earned that name because it included items that he had kept from 1950 well into the 1980s. The 80s set in place new standards: obsession with aerobics, supermodels and cell phones. Warhol captured the spirit of the moment in his work. In 1984, he began collaborating with a generation of young artists who marked the last traces of his work. It was during this time that he met Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring. These artists didn't find novelty in pop and called themselves neo-expressionists. But Andy Warhol influenced different artists and will continue to do so.
Everything became his concept and his history. So this is kind of my, idea is seed, everything.
We're all kind of children and grandchildren of Marcel Duchamp and other artists in history. But Andy brought a lot to the table. He brought a kind of a sense of life and death as disasters, brings such kind of abstraction.
When you think about it, he has an incredible number of descendants. He's more than an artist, he's an icon, but an icon that's still moving on. On the back of my dress, I didn't write 15 minutes of fame, I wrote 15 seconds, and soon there'll be nothing left because we'll all be famous.
Warhol also deeply influenced music and fashion. Warhol became interested in the small screen. He produced 2 cable TV shows that broke the signal schemes. The first show he starred in was called Fashion, followed by Andy Warhol's TV, which had a more serious character and brought together other icons of the time. Musicians like James Brown, groups like Duran Duran, the elegant Paloma Picasso, and film directors like Steven Spielberg all sat down to chat with Warhol about the cultural movement they were living in. They were followed by a show that created a lot of buzz from the recently launched MTV audience. In Andy Warhol's 15 Minutes, a TV spin-off of his most famous phrase, the artist received, in a very entertaining format, stars that were seducing everyone with their video clips at the time. Faces like Grace Jones, Debbie Harry and Marc Jacobs paraded through the show. Although it only had 5 episodes, the show became a television reference because it brought those who would later be remembered as a generation of creators together. It was also the window that shone light on the entire underground art scene and trend-setting nightclubs, like Parachute Disco and Pyramid Club in the East Village. During the early 80s, Warhol's colourful art, logos and references to one of the most prosperous times in US history could be found everywhere. His appearance on the show Love Boat and on the satirical Saturday Night Live were memorable. There, the writers highlighted his obsession with physical care and beauty treatments. While Warhol philosophized, he left another famous phrase behind for future generations. Death means a lot of money, honey. And death can really make you look like a star. While one of the off-screen personnel simultaneously did his makeup. The artist was not afraid of parody or ridicule because he always knew how to capture everyone's attention. He democratized art and transformed simple objects into million-dollar pieces. This caused love and hatred at the same time. What had been the reason for mockery for many years had now become the reason why he stood out and why he was seen as an eccentric figure, almost as if he had just arrived on a special aircraft. His increasingly whitening skin color, his platinum-colored hair, and the countless number of plastic surgeries he underwent to correct the shape of his nose eventually turned him into perhaps what he always wanted to be. Just another plastic product.
Actually, I wanted really to be a tap dancer, and I should have stuck with it. It's so great.
Does Andy Warhol tell his age or is that a secret?
Oh, it's a secret.
He was obsessed with vanity and feared the passage of time. His fixation with hair loss was famous. He began to go bald at the age of 20, and that's why he wore wigs. He dreaded the thought of aging, and that might have led him to create an art that would always keep him young.
Andy, what is your definition of pop?
Well, I'm going to give you a funny. I always think it's just being a dad. They call me Pops around here.
Hence pop art?
Oh, no, just because I'm so old.
He admired beauty, youth, and paid tribute to them through an idealized aesthetic, which froze the passage of time in his works of art, as well as in his photographs.
Who do you think are the hottest young kids around now?
Well, the other day we were at someplace, and I photographed this kid thinking he was a model, and it was John Kennedy, and I thought he was great.
Like everything else in his life, during that time he felt empowered and knowledgeable enough to perfectly blend the trivial with the academic, the wealthy with the poor, and the mundane with the sacred. He knew how to get people talking, And that's how he discovered a new ally in technology to continue selling his works of art like hotcakes. In 1985, he got his hands on his first personal computer, the Amiga 1000, from the American technology company Commodore International. Warhol managed to become their official ambassador, and he decided to embark on the conquest of digital art. Warhol performed at New York's Lincoln Center, along with his friend Debbie Harry, the vocalist from the group Blondie, to promote the Amiga 1000's new drawing software, Pro Paint. His work was ahead of its time. Today, some digital artists believe that if Warhol was still alive, he would still be trailblazing in the art world.
Back in the 80s, painters wouldn't touch computers, so to know that Warhol had the bravery and the courage to go into this format and really see what would happen.
Warhol brought pieces like Botticelli's Venus, his well-known mega can of Campbell's soup, and flowers, which were also part of his signature style into digital formats.
I should have still been painting it. That would have been a better thing.
Really?
Yeah. Then somebody can just be like a store and they just come in and ask you for a can of soup and that was just the easiest way to do something. Because everybody paints the same picture over and over again anyway, so.
So you could have stuck with the soup tins and the Brillo boxes?
Well, just a soup can.
What was the interest to you then in that Campbell's soup tin? What gave you the idea of doing that?
Oh, I used to eat it every day. I still do, so.
The university he attended decided to rummage through the artist's old files and managed to extract the designs he had worked on for hours on their computers. It was recently discovered that Warhol turned down the offer of a young man who insistently called his office to offer him another personal computer. This young man was none other than Steve Jobs, who wanted to promote his new computer, the Macintosh. The processor was a little faster, but offered a very basic grayscale. That's why Warhol decided to continue working with his Amiga 1000. Warhol later decided to abandon working on the software and started a new series that marks the end of a golden era. The artist received a phone call from art magnate Alexander Lolas. He had been one of the first gallery owners to allow him to exhibit solo. And he once again explored themes related to his childhood. Lolas then commissioned a series of pieces to be exhibited right in front of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper in Milan. Warhol regularly attended religious services at the St. Vincent Ferrer Roman Church in Manhattan's Upper East Side. During the holiday season, he would volunteer to help those in need. That tradition, along with the rumor that he was still a virgin in the 80s, placed him at the altar as a rebellious saint.
Have you ever been in love?
No.
No? Does that make you sad?
No. It's just great to be busy.
Because I remember, again, a part of the book you did that you're not a great believer in love.
Not after 15.
It was a purity that was questioned because of the lifestyle he led in his workshop and his late-night partying. Love was elusive for Warhol. His obsession with the writer Truman Capote was well known. He commented that Andy had followed him and observed him from afar in front of his house before meeting him. Then, for years, they maintained a relationship of friends and enemies. Their relationship was more of a rumor and open secret than a proven fact, such as their weakness for their models. Where else could he go? Warhol had already achieved almost everything. A name, commercial success, and effectively transforming the art industry, which was not measured in dollars, but instead in Warhols per year. All forms of media and formats were his. He experimented with the new and with the forgotten, but he always left a mark on everything he touched. With his irreverence and pop art, he taught future generations to lose their astonishment. From the start, he knew that a stain could be sold in the market for millions if its author knew how to sell it. 9 months before his sudden death, as if he had received a message, he set out to create what would be one of his last and perhaps most remembered series. He left aside the portraits of Elvis, Marilyn, and other great stars, and decided to pose in front of a camera in the most honest way.
C'est tout à fait iconique parce qu'il le représente et c'est un des premiers autoportraits que Warhol réalise. C'est très important dans son travail parce que il s'agit d'une image qui est répétée plusieurs fois, qui est un des thèmes centraux de son travail.
The camera captured him stiff, smiling, with his platinum hair all over the place, and also very reflective. Hundreds of versions of the same man, non-stop repetition with different colors and nuances. Maybe they were the photos of someone who knew he would never be forgotten. His greatest accomplishment was being able to make everyday life something worthy of admiring in a museum. A motive with which he was able to scandalize and at the same time speak of naturality, food, luxury, money, aspirations, dreams and frustrations. All these issues have followed mankind since the beginning of time. Thanks to the saturation of information circulating in the media and social networks, they now seem normal. But back then, it wasn't common. Just as death was one of his recurring themes, both in paintings, photographs, and anecdotes. His death, quick and unexpected, ended up thrusting him into eternal fame. At the age of 58, Warhol died in New York after a complication during an operation to remove his gallbladder. On February 22, 1987, his heart stopped beating. His friend, Yoko Ono, shared some words at his funeral. His body was buried in St. John the Baptist Byzantine Catholic Cemetery in Bethel Park, just outside of Pittsburgh. His story, his passion for celebrities and fame, made him a star that still shines today.
And I start the bidding here at $6 million a bid. It's 12 million with Alex already. Thank you. That's a good bid. $12 million. $5,400,000 selling now. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, sir. Thank you.
Desire to have great things will make people step up, you know, and pay $6 million for this object and pay $40 million or above for this because they know that they are unique.
30 years after his death, Warhol continues surprising critics and admirers of his work. No one doubts that his name is part of art history. With its particular splendor, with its colors, with his genius that illuminated and blinded, but always stood out. Andy Warhol, Fluorescent.